remote hills of a forgotten town stood the old Delirium Asylum, its walls thick with the whispers of the past. The asylum had been abandoned for decades, yet its reputation lingered, painting it as a place where sanity unraveled and dark secrets festered. One stormy evening, a young journalist named Emma arrived with her camera and notepad, determined to uncover the truth behind the asylum's sinister legend. The heavy rain battered against the cracked windows as Emma stepped through the rusted gates and into the cold, decaying corridors. The asylum was a maze of peeling wallpaper and crumbling plaster. Emma's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing glimpses of long-forgotten rooms and eerie medical equipment. Each step she took echoed through the empty halls, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She reached the former patient's dormitory, where the air was thick with a musty odor. The room was filled with old, tattered beds, their metal frames twisted and broken. Emma began taking photographs, her camera's flash illuminating the desolate space. As she moved to the next room, she noticed something peculiar, a series of scratches on the wall, as if someone had clawed at the paint in a desperate frenzy. The scratching sound began again, faint but persistent. Emma's heart raced, and she turned to see shadows flickering just out of her flashlight's beam. A cold gust of wind swept through the corridor, and the door slammed shut behind her. Emma tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. Her flashlight began to flicker, and in the dim light, she saw shadowy figures darting across the walls. Her camera, which had been silent until now, began to snap pictures on its own. Emma's hands shook as she reviewed the images. The photos revealed ghostly figures, their faces contorted in anguish, reaching out as if pleading for release. A voice echoed through the asylum, a low, mournful cry that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Emma followed the sound to the asylum's old isolation ward. The room was stark, with a single chair in the center. Strapped to the chair was a frayed straitjacket, its buckles rusty and worn. Suddenly, the room was filled with the whispers of the long-lost patients. Emma saw fleeting apparitions of tormented souls, their eyes hollow and filled with despair. The shadows moved closer, their whispers growing louder, forming words that Emma could almost understand. "Help us. Free us." The atmosphere grew suffocating. Emma's flashlight flickered out, plunging her into darkness. In the pitch black, she felt cold, clammy hands brushing against her skin, pulling her towards the center of the room. She stumbled, trying to break free, but the hands tightened their grip. With a final, desperate effort, Emma managed to kick open the door and escape back into the main hallway. The asylum seemed to be alive with malevolent energy. The walls pulsating as if breathing, Emma ran, her mind reeling, until she reached the entrance. As she fled into the stormy night, she glanced back at the asylum. The windows, once dark and empty, now glowed with a faint, eerie light. She could see the faces of the trapped souls peering out, their expressions a blend of sorrow and rage. Emma never spoke of what she saw in Delirium Asylum. The footage from her camera was lost, and she left the town behind, never to return. But sometimes, on stormy nights, she would hear the whispers of the asylum's lost souls in her dreams, pleading for someone to uncover the truth and set them free. Weeks had passed since Emma's harrowing encounter at Delirium Asylum, and she tried to return to her normal life. Yet the asylum's dark presence lingered in her thoughts, leaving her sleepless and haunted by the whispers of the lost souls. Her dreams were plagued with visions of the asylum's corridors and the tormented faces of its former inhabitants. Desperate to find closure, Emma sought the help of Dr. Nathaniel Gray, a renowned psychiatrist with a special interest in paranormal phenomena. Dr. Gray had heard of the asylum's dark history and agreed to investigate, hoping to uncover the truth behind the unsettling reports. Together, Emma and Dr. Gray returned to the asylum under the cover of darkness. The storm that had accompanied Emma's previous visit had given way to a chilling silence. The moonlight cast eerie shadows through the broken windows as they entered. Dr. Gray was equipped with state-of-the-art equipment, electromagnetic field meters, infrared cameras, and voice recorders. He was determined to get to the bottom of the asylum's mysteries, but Emma remained apprehensive, the memories of her previous encounter fresh in her mind. They began their exploration in the isolation ward, where Emma had felt the most intense presence. The air was colder here, and the feeling of dread was palpable. Dr. Gray set up his equipment and started taking readings, while Emma stood by, her flashlight scanning the room nervously. Suddenly, the voice recorder picked up faint, distorted whispers. Dr. Gray adjusted the settings and played the recording back. The voices were clearer now, repeating a single word over and over: release. As they moved through the asylum, they encountered more unsettling phenomena. Objects shifted on their own, and the temperature dropped dramatically in certain rooms. Dr. Gray's equipment recorded spikes in electromagnetic activity, suggesting an intense paranormal presence. In the old records room, Dr. Gray discovered patient files scattered across the floor. They were filled with disturbing accounts of experimental treatments and abuses. The asylum had once been known for its cruel and unorthodox methods, and the suffering it had caused seemed to resonate throughout the building. Emma and Dr. Gray continued their investigation into the early hours of the morning. As they reached the asylum's basement, they found a hidden door partially obscured by debris. Dr. Gray's tools indicated a significant energy source behind it. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, they managed to pry the door open. The basement was a labyrinth of cold, stone chambers. In one of the chambers, they discovered an old, rusted operating table surrounded by archaic medical equipment. The walls were lined with faded graffiti, some of it written in what appeared to be blood. The words spoke of despair and hopelessness. Dr. Gray's attention was drawn to an old journal lying on a dusty shelf. The journal belonged to Dr. Victor Sterling, the asylum's chief physician, whose name was mentioned in the files they had found. The entries detailed unethical experiments and the doctor's growing obsession with proving the existence of an afterlife by tormenting patients. As Dr. Gray read the journal aloud, a chilling wind swept through the chamber. The temperature plummeted, and a ghostly figure materialized in the corner. It was Dr. Sterling himself, his face twisted in rage and sorrow. He seemed to be trapped between worlds, unable to find peace. The apparition began to speak, its voice a tortured whisper. It revealed that Dr. Sterling's experiments had gone terribly wrong, trapping the souls of his victims in a state of limbo. The ghosts were bound to the asylum, their suffering extending beyond death. Emma and Dr. Gray understood that to free the trapped souls, they needed to confront Dr. Sterling's spirit and lay to rest the unfinished business of his atrocities. With Dr. Gray's guidance, they conducted a seance, using the journal's writings to communicate with the restless spirits. As the seance progressed, the energy in the room grew intense. The shadows swirled around them, and the walls seemed to pulse with the anguish of the trapped souls. Dr. Sterling's spirit appeared, more defined now, his rage giving way to a pleading desperation. "Release us," he implored, his voice a mix of remorse and fear. "I was wrong. I tried to control what I couldn't understand. Help them find peace." Emma and Dr. Gray focused on offering forgiveness and acknowledging the suffering that had occurred. They performed a ritual to guide the spirits towards the light, their words echoing through the chambers. The temperature began to stabilize, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The ghosts of the asylum, including Dr. Sterling's, gradually faded from view, their anguished expressions softening as they moved towards the light of the afterlife. Exhausted but relieved, Emma and Dr. Gray exited the asylum as dawn broke. The building stood silent, its malevolent presence seemingly lifted. Emma felt a sense of closure, knowing that she had helped bring peace to the tormented souls. Though the asylum remained a crumbling relic, it was no longer a place of suffering. Emma and Dr. Gray parted ways, their lives forever changed by the echoes of Delirium Asylum. Emma returned to her life, but she often thought of the asylum. The experience had left an indelible mark on her, a reminder of the fragile line between life and death, and the power of redemption and release. The days following their ordeal at Delirium Asylum were a mix of relief and reflection for Emma and Dr. Gray. Emma returned to her apartment with a heavy heart but a sense of closure, knowing that the souls trapped within the asylum had finally found peace. The stormy nights that once brought whispers of torment now brought a calm quietude. Dr. Gray continued his work, now more dedicated than ever to understanding the boundary between the living and the dead. He was determined to use his experiences to help others who faced similar encounters. Despite their shared experience, Emma and Dr. Gray agreed to part ways, each finding their own path to move forward. Months later, Emma received a letter from Dr. Gray, who had been researching further into the dark history of the asylum. The letter contained copies of newly uncovered documents and photographs he had found in the asylum's archives. Among them was a revelation that would change everything Emma thought she knew about Delirium Asylum. The documents detailed not only the experimental treatments but also a hidden agenda. Dr. Sterling had been working on a secret project to harness the energy of the souls trapped in the asylum. His goal was to achieve immortality by binding spirits to his will, but his experiments had spiraled out of control, leading to the asylum's notorious reputation. Dr. Gray's findings included an old schematic of the asylum's layout, showing a hidden underground chamber, one that Emma and Dr. Gray had missed. According to the documents, this chamber contained an artifact that Dr. Sterling had believed could control the spirits. Intrigued and slightly apprehensive, Emma decided to return to Delirium Asylum. Armed with the new information, she hoped to ensure that the artifact was no longer a threat. She contacted Dr. Gray, who agreed to join her in a final exploration. When they arrived, the asylum seemed different. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, but the structure itself remained as decayed as ever. They navigated through the asylum's corridors with renewed determination, following the schematic to the hidden chamber. After a challenging search, they finally discovered a concealed hatch beneath a layer of debris. With some effort, they managed to open it and descended into the hidden chamber. The room was filled with strange symbols and arcade artifacts, but the most notable was a dark, ornate box resting on a pedestal. Emma and Dr. Gray carefully approached the box. It was adorned with intricate carvings and pulsated with a faint, ominous energy. They knew this was likely the artifact that Dr. Sterling had used to control the spirits. With great caution, they opened the box, revealing a shimmering crystal inside. The crystal seemed to resonate with a haunting melody, a remnant of the souls that had once been trapped in the asylum. Dr. Gray explained that this crystal was a conduit, a means by which Dr. Sterling had attempted to control and manipulate the spirits. Emma and Dr. Gray decided to destroy the crystal to prevent it from ever being used again. They set up a ritual with protective measures and carefully shattered the crystal. As it broke, a wave of energy surged through the chamber, and a soft, serene light filled the room. The spirits seemed to acknowledge the act of liberation, their presence now fading into a peaceful silence. Emma and Dr. Gray felt a profound sense of accomplishment as the malevolent energy dissipated. The chamber's oppressive atmosphere lifted, leaving behind a tranquil calm. With the artifact destroyed and the spirits freed, Emma and Dr. Gray exited the asylum for the final time. They left behind not just the physical remnants of Delirium Asylum, but also the lingering echoes of its dark past. As they parted ways once more, both Emma and Dr. Gray felt that their work was complete. The asylum's shadows had been confronted and dispelled, and the souls that had once suffered there were finally at rest. Emma continued her life with a renewed sense of purpose, using her experiences to advocate for mental health awareness and the humane treatment of patients. Dr. Gray's research flourished, his work now focused on ethical practices and the understanding of paranormal phenomena. The story of Delirium Asylum became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the importance of compassion. Though the asylum stood abandoned, its legacy was no longer one of horror, but of redemption and the triumph of peace over darkness. And so, the echoes of Delirium Asylum faded into history, a silent testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring quest for justice and release. Alright everyone, that brings us to the end of our story. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like this, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. And if you have similar stories you'd like to share with us, feel free to reach out. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.